Welcome to SPK Speak Sports. On our station, we talk about baseball and sports news, from the most recent stories to the throwbacks. Listen now to Scott, Paul, and Kelly on SPK Speak Sports as they hit the ball out of the park.
You hit the ball out of the park, Speak Sports.
Yep, it's us again, so I don't know. I'm just saying you might want to think about getting a restraining order, but since you're here now, let's do this. My name's Scott.
I'm Paul.
I'm Kelly.
And we are SPK Speak Sports. We are speaking to you today just outside of Boise, Idaho at the brand new Desilu studio. And the reason we're broadcasting from the Desilu studio is because we have some mansplaining to do regarding baseball and maybe some other topics, such as a cute joke I heard the other day. We haven't had a lot of chance in the last 6-7 months for some levity. Construction worker. He's working his little butt off all day. He's really tired. Goes into the coffee shop after work. Waitress comes over and says, "I just like 3 things. Cup of coffee, piece of pie, a few kind words." She leaves. A couple minutes later, brings back his coffee, his pie, and starts to leave. And he goes, "What about my kind words?" And she goes, "Don't eat the pie." So just trying to light things up. And the other thing that really brightens my day, guys, is whenever I see a Snoop Dogg commercial for Corona or the General Insurance, I just levitate. I just think that's great. Remember all these edgy rappers from the 80s and 90s? They were edgy, right? Yeah. Now Queen Latifah, what is she selling these days? Muffins or something like that? And you got Ice-T, and I think he was doing Ice-T commercials. These edgy guys, and now they're like movie star commercial people, Yeah. Anyway, enough of that.
Sell out one word or two.
Yeah. Why don't you do your poetic justice thing
sure.
here? And
last week's rhyme to remember the 8 teams still left in the playoffs, I guess went over okay. So I thought I'd run another one by you. This is for the 4 teams. It's hard for me to remember even 4. The 4 teams still left. The Dodgers are the NL faves, but don't count out the gritty Braves. The Raves' play made them Yankee beaters, but now must dispatch the shameless cheaters.
Oh! Yeah, I like
Thank
that.
you.
Also, I forgot, we're getting big money for this. We're brought to you again. We didn't think it was going to happen again today, but it is Mutton Buster Beer because, Kelly?
I have a little story. I had a guy come over. He was fixing a window for me. And I was the last guy on his schedule. So he fixed a window. We started talking. I told him, I said, "Hey, you want a beer? I got some mutton beer in the refrigerator." So I get the mutton beer. I go to the refrigerator, get the mutton beer. No mutton beer. So there was another domestic beer there. I'm not going to say what it is. I don't want to. And I came out and I gave the guy that beer, and he said, "Nah." He said, "You know what? If I can't have a can of mutton, I don't want nothing." And it's like Scott's right. This is big time. This and maybe some Boise State football, and people in Idaho. We don't need anything else.
And there isn't much else, really. But that's okay. We love it here.
It is.
So there you go. And also Kelly, Paul, myself, along with the vacuum cleaner, Brooks Robinson, the Say Hey Kid, Willie Mays, and Yogi. And actually it's the 8 of us because we got Nancy, our demanding director, behind the camera, along with Luke, the CEO. So we got to kind of watch what we say there. So it's the 8 of us. And also we'd just like to give a shout out to Hannah, who is our executive vice president in charge of vice presidency. But she's on the IL right now, but she'll be back with us. Yeah. So we just want to acknowledge everybody. Okay, you did your little poetry thing. I'm not that guy. I got the best teams to play in the World Series, the Dodgers and Tampa Bay. Those would be the 2 best teams. They've been there from the beginning up till now. The most watched, I think, would be the Cheaters and the Dodgers. Yes. Because I think everybody, if you got a soul, you'd be rooting for LA. 4 straight. Don't mix and match anything. Just get it over with and take it to them. The least watched would be Atlanta, Tampa Bay.
Yeah,
I agree.
That would pretty much be the South and nothing else.
So let's just hope Dodgers and whomever, the best team would be Tampa Bay, and the most would be the Astros. And the thing about the Astros, it's too bad Dusty Baker, good guy. Everybody's liked Dusty Baker. His 5th team that he's led to the postseason.
Right.
But we don't like your guys. And I saw something in the paper the other day that said the Astros are the unapologetic Houston Astros. They're still, it's like they got a chip on their shoulder. What? Why do you have a chip on your shoulder? Because you guys cheated. Now it's like we're the guys that, all of us fans are the people who were wrong. So
well, I think that's their rallying cry to kind of like, we're us against the world type.
We got some feedback this week, though, from a viewer who thought that we were a little too hard on the Astros, that their championship in 2017 was legit. He says, everybody cheats, they got caught, and that was his position on it. I'm not sure he was completely aware of the use of technology or the extent of the use of technology back in 17. But nonetheless, they're going to have their proponents too.
Well, this is the thing with Houston. A few years back, they had 3 consecutive 100-loss seasons.
True.
So what they did, they drafted great players. And Houston has a very good team. These guys they have good, solid players. And I would say that, just because you get these draft picks doesn't mean you always pick the right guys, but they did. But the sad part about the whole thing, whether you're looking at the cheating scandal of Houston or even the steroid, is that the people that are cheating are some of them are Hall of Fame players. You don't even need to. That's the sad part about it.
I just finished watching the 2nd season of Cobra Kai on Netflix, which is it was either the playoffs or Cobra Kai. And I just finished watching the 2nd season, and as far as being too hard on the Astros, no mercy. The guys, they cheated and they got caught. If you cheat and you don't get caught, more power to you, I guess. What's the old line? If you ain't cheating, you aren't trying.
Right.
And going to your point, Kelly, 3 years in a row of 100 losses, that's a lot of garbage. So you can't really blame them for having those garbage cans in the dugout, right?
They knew something about garbage,
Well, if Houston were to win, they would deserve this piece of plastic. So
so who are you picking?
I'm picking the Dodgers. Go figure.
Yeah, but I mean, who in the American League do you think is going to?
Well, I think Tampa Bay should win, but a part of me is kind of, I want revenge.
Yeah.
I want a bit of the Astros. But it's already kind of a cheap season with the 60-game regular season.
Right.
I don't want a cheaper season by having a sub-500 regular season team in the World Series against my team. I want my team to beat the best.
Yeah.
And Tampa Bay is, I think, the 2nd best team.
Okay. I think I'm picking Atlanta just because in the beginning of the year I picked Atlanta.
I can't be your friend anymore.
I know. Well,
you can't change now.
Yeah, so I'm picking Atlanta. I think Atlanta's the only team that could beat the Dodgers. So I don't think the American League teams can beat the Dodgers. But so I'm picking Atlanta and Tampa. But the Dodgers will probably get in there.
And that's the thing, too. 16 teams, you're going to have that. Under 5. I don't look at that as a rocky underdog thing. You've been a less than 500 average ball team all year, and now you're going to get into the World Series. I don't think so. Do we really want? I don't want that. No. Speaking of college football. It is college football season. I'm not really into that either, but I do have to say, watching the highlights the other day, I saw an odd sight in the stands. Fans.
Yeah.
So my question is, if they can have fans at college football games, MLB, playoffs, World Series, I did hear that they were going to allow family and friends of the teams in the World Series. So that's, 300, 400, 500 people maybe. But those stands at the football games looked like they were, it wasn't like 10,000 people. It was like 25, 30, maybe 40,000 people. So what up with that?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think they got to have some fans, I mean, I don't see why not.
The college football conferences have commissioners who are actually adept at doing things. Baseball lacks a commissioner who is adept at doing anything, and that's part of it.
Yeah.
And the owners have no chutzpah, no guts, and no guts leads to no glory.
Yeah.
And that's the problem with college with Major League Baseball this year.
Well, I know. I was watching the Notre Dame game, and the way they sit the fans is everybody that's in the dorms, like that are in one section of all sit together, so they're not going to infect anybody else if anybody. So that's one way of doing it. But it seemed normal, It's like it felt normal.
Besides, that was Notre Dame, and they were all having keggers the night before anyway. So.
Well, that keeps all the germs out. They have their mutton.
Or nothing.
So.
But the games have been, from what I've seen too, it's almost like a home run or nothing in baseball. They've been like 60-something to 50-something, and some good teams or teams that have been good, like LSU, has
They've already
given up
lost
a
twice.
lot of points. I think they've given up 90-some-odd points or more
Yeah.
in 3 games. So I was reading that they're saying about not just the college football season, because of the practice and then stopping and starting again,
that's rough.
that they haven't really gotten to a groove yet. And
Right.
the same thing with the officials, that there's been some bad officiating, because a lot of these guys, they're having drive to games and not fly, so they're working with different people, and
Right.
there have been some not well officiated ball games there.
Yeah.
So they're
Thank
I
God
guess,
for replay, I guess.
yeah, really. We lost another Hall of Famer this past week, Whitey Ford,
Yeah.
the chairman of the board, Whitey Ford, and palled around with Mickey and Billy Martin. And he was kind of, I think, the one that kind of got away with stuff, and everybody knew about Mickey and doing his act away from the game, and Billy Martin, how volatile he was. And Whitey just
He
kind
groomed
of.
him. He's the kind of guy you wouldn't think's the wild guy. It was Billy Martin and it was Mickey Mantle.
He made sure
And
they took the attention off of him.
Yeah,
that was the deal.
He had guys that took the flack,
But that was a pretty good deal for him. He was born in the Bronx, and he
Yeah,
played his whole career with the Yankees.
And he was a big time winner.
Yeah, I think he nicked up the baseball a little bit, did a little bit of cheating
If you're
himself.
not
But he
cheating,
wasn't
yeah.
the only guy back then in the 50s and 60s. But a couple of things on stats. He had a 690 winning percentage. That's higher than anybody with 300 decisions or more. So Kershaw's better at 697, but he doesn't have 300 or more decisions. He will have. Whitey had a 2.75 career ERA. Kershaw's 2.45, and so kind of comparable. Although Kershaw obviously more a power pitcher.
Right.
And I just like to mention another. He didn't pass away today, but he passed away 5 years ago today, and that's my friend Dean Chance, who initially started with the Angels. Mentioned last week about his big Cy Young year in '64. He was voted by the Sporting News, talking about a guy kind of flew under the radar, voted by the Sporting News the right-handed pitcher of the decade in the American League for the '60s. And I was lucky enough to catch his ceremonial first pitch in 2011. I can't believe it's been 9 years. Wow. He called me up and he goes, "Scotty, guess who's going to catch me when I come out to throw?" The ceremony first pitch, and I guess a couple of people. I don't know. He goes, "Nope, Scotty Keene." And I go, "You got to be kidding." His son had already planned a big vacation trip at that time with his family, so he couldn't come out and make it. So I told Dean I was watching all the ex-Angels that would come out to throw the ceremonial first pitch at all the home games, and I was watching every one, and most of the guys would bounce it. Mark Langston, blonde-haired, good-looking guy. He was about maybe 50 at the time or so. Looked like 35, like a two-hopper. And they'd always blame the jackets.
Yeah.
They had this great red wool jacket that would restrict your arm movement. So I told Dean, I said, when you come out here, first thing the director of communications, Tim Mead, our friend, is going to want you to do is put on the jacket. Politely refuse. And I said, and we've got to warm up, because all these guys would go, I really thought it was going to be easy. It was no big deal. And then they find out not only did they have this slick gold baseball, but that, the old arm didn't warm up. So Dean warmed up with me under the stands before the game. And the first 3 pitches he threw, I couldn't catch. They were so high and to my left, and I went, oh, dude. And then I saw this 70-year-old man get this competitiveness in his eyes, and for like the next couple minutes, bringing it right to me. Not painting, but right here. Yeah. And got out there, and he was probably about an inch or two inside, didn't bounce it, and then he put on the jacket.
Makes you appreciate what President Bush did back in 2001, wearing not just the jacket, but underneath it the bulletproof vest.
Who when Dean Chance was traded to Minnesota, who the Angels got for him?
No. Don Mincher?
Don Mincher was one.
And I don't remember the other.
Jimmy Hall,
yeah. Yeah, Dean still had a couple years left.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was a big thrill for me, and I talked to Dean's son today. He texted me, and I said, I can't believe it's been 5 years since he's passed. But he was a good guy.
Yeah.
He was a character.
Good pitcher.
He's the only player of the ones I would talk to, which are now down to about 4 or 5. He would call me. And he would also call a friend of ours, Bob Case, who was our clubhouse guy at one time, been around baseball, worked for Casey Stengel the last 10 years of his life. And Dean would call Bob Case like about every other day, or Bob said about every day. And he'd call, if he reached the voicemail, he'd go, yeah, Bob, Dean Chance here. And Bob would go, like, I don't recognize his voice. It wasn't just like, hey, it's Dean. Like, Dean Chance here. And he would do that when I didn't answer the phone. So he was a good guy. He was a character. So college football.
Yeah.
So I got fans.
I watched Notre Dame. That's my team, and they played Florida State, beat them. They didn't look that great on defense, but like you said, I think they were off for a couple of weeks because of the virus, and it's difficult to kind of
in my
gear
life,
up.
Notre Dame is the virus.
Yeah, well, that's
I'm a USC fan.
That's going for SC, but they're going to be playing in a few weeks, so just
not each other.
Yeah,
unfortunately.
Yeah, they're going to play and then Boise State up here is going to play in a few weeks here. So.
Go Broncos.
Yeah, so
on the Big Blue.
And then on the AP poll, Clemson, Alabama, Georgia, Notre Dame's 4th, North Carolina, Ohio State hasn't played yet, and they're 6th.
I'm sorry, the Ohio State.
Yeah, Oklahoma State, Cincinnati, Penn State is 9th. They haven't played. Florida's 10th. They lost. So,
may I just revert back a few years? I mentioned a few things about being a bat boy the first year. A guy named Jim Baxis, who played on the 57 Pacific Coast League Angels in 57. And the neat thing about the Angel Clubhouse at Wrigley Field, which I was privileged enough to be the bat boy that first year, and then before they moved to Dodger Stadium, and you would come down like about 4 or 5 steps and go along about 8 feet, and then go down more, and there was a chain link fence, so fans could see the players coming in and out of the clubhouse. And I was lined up in 57. I was probably 7 or 8 kids deep to get Jim Bax's autograph. He opened up the door and he's signing autographs. I get to about 1 or 2, and he has to go out to the field. 11-year-old Scott kind of, like, I didn't get Jim Bax. 4 years later, I'm in the clubhouse. The payphone rings. Payphone, for those of you under 30, you couldn't take pictures with it. There was no internet. You had to put in like a dime or a quarter or something and dial it anyway. So the payphone rings in the locker room, and I pick it up because nobody else is close by. Is Billy Moran there? It was our second baseman. I guess, yeah, who may I say is calling? Jim Baxis. And I thought, wow, 4 years later, I'm on the inside. Jim Baxis is on the outside looking at. Not that it was a bad thing. He just had to go out to the field.
Yeah.
But I just thought that was kind of interesting. My first plane ride was that summer when we got to go on the road trip. And it was exciting because it was on the private plane, the KO, which was Walter O'Malley's plane. But the Dodgers would obviously come in and play, and the Angels would leave. We'd come back, and the Dodgers would take their plane out to the road trip. So to go on an airplane for the first time, and all that was on the plane was the players, management, the media, and the hostesses, the waitresses, were the players, like Del Rice and Rocky Bridges. So it was really cool for about the first 6 hours. And then it got to be, for me, are we there yet? 9.5 hours later, from LA to Boston.
Wow.
So I had my fill of that plane for a while, but and then also I just wanted to mention about the last game played where the Angels guys let Tito Francona bunt down the third base line twice and get to 300. In the middle of the first bunt and the second bunt, he's playing first base. Lee Thomas gets a base hit, gets off the base. Tito Francona pulls a hidden ball trick on him, and Lee Thomas goes, "You blankety, but we're going to let you hit 300." And you, fortunately, the umpire, umpires didn't see it, so he didn't call him out.
Wow. And they didn't have replay.
No replay. So, and Pete Rose should be in the Hall of Fame. I keep seeing, when I'm not seeing Snoop Dogg commercials, I'm seeing DraftKings commercials.
Right.
Everything I see, Scott Van Pelt, it's betting. So is he a likable guy? No. Did he do unbelievable things with the talent that he had, which wasn't the most talent? He wasn't Mike Trout, but he maximized what he had, and he was passionate about winning and playing as hard as he could till they had to rip the uniform off of him. So I keep seeing these things about gambling. I think put Pete Rose in at this point in time.
That's
and take somebody out.
there you go.
Bringing us to the here and now, the present. I want to
What?
get input from you guys.
Here and now?
The here and now.
Okay.
I want to get input from you guys. As a Dodger fan, there are a couple of guys that I'm going to be watching during this series with the Braves. And if they're successful, the Dodgers will be successful. And I think every team has like this tandem. It's not necessarily the best players on the team or the superstars. Sometimes it is. In the Dodgers case, it's a superstar and a star. I'd say I'm going to be keeping an eye, making sure. I mean, Kershaw, he's got to have a good series. When Justin Turner is on, the Dodgers are a lot better team. And fortunately, he's got an amazing postseason batting average. He's a key player in these situations. Looking at the other teams, though, the Braves, do you see like two guys on the Braves who need to perform for them to have a chance in the series?
I'd say
Freeman.
Friedman.
Those are the two I got.
And Fried, the pitcher.
How about the Rays?
Well, and also Ozuna and Acuna.
Yeah. For the
For
Tampa,
the Rays, yeah.
I think that their pitcher Glasnow and Morton and
Snell.
And
Snell's pitching tonight against some guy, and I can't remember his name. That's where Houston's gone with Verlander being done and
Framber
Cole being
Valdez.
traded. Yeah,
And he's the guy.
He's pitched well.
He
Yeah,
has, and he's
yeah.
one of the guys with Houston.
Yeah.
George Springer is the other.
Yeah.
I'm not looking at Altuve. I'm looking at George Springer.
Yeah.
And
He's
Framber
free
Valdez.
agent. So he really wants to.
And that was really neat about Mike Brosire, whatever his name is, who undrafted,
the
the guy
guy
that
last
hits
night,
the
yeah.
home run off
Yeah.
of Chapman.
Yeah.
That's been happening to Chapman a while now.
Yeah.
And how he threw at his head, and then he hit 2 home runs off him the next time he faced him. So
Right.
guy undrafted and just said, hey, I can do this. 5'10", so they're not
Yeah.
looking for 5'10".
Yeah.
And if he does nothing else, he'll always have that.
Yeah.
You
Well, there's always a guy that, even when you get to the series or a playoff, a guy gets hot. I remember Gene Tennis years ago.
No,
He didn't
with
do.
the A's.
Yeah, he was a catcher with the A's years ago, and then all of a sudden the series comes.
Oh, yeah.
Boom, Mazeroski.
Yeah.
There's always these guys. But getting back to
Well, Mazeroski's in the Hall because of that, I think.
yeah, he wouldn't have made it if it wasn't for that. But Kershaw, when a guy say that's the part of his game maybe that people look at and they say, well, he hasn't really performed in the playoffs. I think mentally that gets to a guy if he's kind of has that reputation of not living up to the importance of the championship. And he gave up a couple of home runs the other day.
He did.
So you don't want this to play on itself, because if he has a good game, if like you say, if they'll win. I mean, because he's going to have 3 starts, 2 starts for sure,
2 for
maybe
sure.
3. You probably put him in there. So
Because it's 7 days with no breaks.
oh yeah,
So it's not like
yeah,
a typical
yeah,
7-game
that's
series
right,
where you
yeah.
get a couple of days
Yeah.
off.
So I just.
What's the rush? Why don't we have one game after the 3rd or 4th game? I mean,
Well,
It's a scary enough year, and they wanted to finish
well, but
before
is
Halloween.
1 day, 2 days going to make a
Yeah,
difference?
and that's the thing is they're not traveling, right?
No.
So it's all in one part.
Yep.
And where are they playing the final? Is it?
It's in Globe Life.
Oh, okay, so that's in Texas.
And ballpark that nobody's been able to visit. Going for the piece of plastic that symbolizes 2020.
Right. So, yeah, that'll be...
And you know, being in October reminds me of Reggie Jackson. And the story that I heard a week or so ago, Reggie's trying to get into the game in Cleveland, and the security guard didn't recognize him. He says, "Who are you?" And he said, "I'm Reggie Jackson." He says, "How do you spell that?" He goes, MROCTOBER. I got to tell you, I've been threatening to tell you these stories, and I'm going to leave John Herbold till next week.
That's the one I want to hear.
Okay, we'll do the John Herbold. So John Herbold, legendary coach in high school for what was it? Lakewood for years and years, and becomes the coach at Cal State LA. And I was privileged, interestingly enough, to umpire some of his games. So I heard the story, and I asked one of his assistant coaches. He was an intern at the time. He said it's absolutely true. So can we see this, Nancy? Can we see Cornelius? Can we get that? It's a demonstration purposes. So he goes out. Can we see that? Yes?
As best as we can.
As best as we
It's in
can.
there.
Okay. Willie? Sorry, pal.
Brooks, move over.
So John Herbold's not getting the home plate umpire's strike zone, and it's just all over the place to him. So he comes out and he says to the umpire, I mean, this, again, from the dugout's perspective, all they see, and the fans, all they see is John Herbold talking about here and here, which represents, you know, you're calling him up here, you're calling him down here. But he's saying to the umpire, you know, it fascinates me. I like to grow stuff in the backyard, and I love to grow corn. And some of the corn grows up to here, but some of it just gets down to here. So he's talking about corn, and the umpire doesn't eject him because he's talking about we're talking about corn. And he said, it's very creative, John, but if you come out talking about corn again, you're gone. So that's number one. And number two, he had a big thing about guys, you know, not making a play close by standing up on usually a double and standing up and being safe by that much, as opposed to giving me the effort, sliding, and it's not close. It's that. You're definitely safe. And he wanted guys called out for that. And he went out to one of the umpires I know who had called his guy safe. And he's safe, and John's coming out to argue. And the other coach, after he leaves, goes out and talks to Brian, the umpire. Said, "What's the deal?" He says, "He wanted me to whack him out because he didn't give the effort." And then along with that, he had that happen once in a game. He tells all the guys after the game, he says, "Meet me at the bus. Nobody gets on the bus till I get there." And they're on, obviously, cement in the bus. And he looks at him, he says, "You know how real men play this game?" And he proceeds to slide on some cement, gets up, he's all bloodied, his knees and elbows and everything. He says, "That's how real men play this game. Get on the bus."
And that's why he's a legendary coach.
As old school as you're ever going to get.
Wow.
You know?
That's why they won.
So, shoot.
Well,
Nancy says to wrap up.
Like
All
a
right.
burrito.
So anyway, think about that restraining order. Otherwise, we'll be back, Lord willing. Creeks don't rise next week. So for Kelly, for Paul, for Scott, we say adieu
Bye.
to you.
You hit the ball out of the park, Speak Sports.